China's Ministry of Commerce says that restoring stability in U.S.-China trade relations is the best way to, quote, de-risk, claiming it would stabilize business expectations and increase business confidence. Now, U.S. and EU officials often use the term de-risk to describe their relationship with China and how they're not looking to completely separate or decouple. U.S. Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo in China this week saying, quote, decoupling is neither in our economic or national security goals. Joining me now, former Trump State Department and senior advisor and Center for the National Interest senior fellow Christian White. And Christian, good morning.
Morning, Cheryl.
You know, Gina Raimondo's trip, start to finish, is just a lesson in just how to get laughs. What did she really accomplish?
She accomplished nothing, really. I mean, this is the fourth visit by a senior member of the administration to Beijing in what I call the summer of love with China. And like her predecessors, comes home with nothing and leaves China with the impression, which is really reflected in the statement, that they can get away with anything, that they can engage in any misconduct, which they continue to do, disputes with every single one of their neighbors, pretty much, continued cyber attacks against us, continued political warfare against us. And, you know, what do you get? You just get more Biden cabinet members who want to come over and make nice. Now, she created a couple of working groups, one on export controls, but those are essentially pointless. Basically, there's the shift in this administration from a pretty weak China policy to an incredibly weak China policy.
Well, China is, of course they are, slamming the Biden administration after it approved the sale of an $80 million military package for Taiwan. So Beijing claims it, quote, severely violates the one China principle. And then they say, quote, it deplores and firmly opposes it. Christian, I guess it's no surprise that they're coming out with these strong words. But it's the question with China always is, what are their actions going to be?
Right. Their actions will probably be stepped up. Intimidation, where it used to be rare for Chinese naval craft to cross the center line in the Strait of Taiwan or to circumnavigate Taiwan. That now happens on a daily basis. They go into Taiwan's not sovereign airspace, but their air defense identification zone without communicating, things they didn't used to do. But maybe it's a surprise, maybe it's not a surprise, as the Biden administration doesn't push back on any of this. $81 million, compare that to more than $100 billion that we have given to Ukraine for aid. Taiwan actually pays for its arms. And why does it need it? It needs it because China is acting in a belligerent fashion, has this unexplained massive military buildup. I think they have about as many or more ships than we do in our Navy now. And this is something we've been doing since 1979 when the Taiwan Relations Act passed. So I'd like to see some aggressive language from the Biden administration, but of course that's not going to happen.
The opposite is happening. They're going one after the other. John Kerry, Gina Raimondo, you know, it's a constant stream of them. My question has been, why? Do you think it's because Biden is trying to butter up Xi Jinping so that he can get a meeting with him here on U.S. soil?
That's the short-term goal. Certainly somewhere we have been begging somewhere in the world, whether it's in Beijing, whether you know, they'd likely meet at on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly if Xi Jinping comes to that. He's been skipping some summits recently, but more broadly, it's because of failures in Biden foreign policy. We're 2 years out of the collapse in Afghanistan that humiliated the United States. In Ukraine, which was supposed to be the resolving issue that washed away the failure of Afghanistan, is in essentially a stalemate now. And so what does Biden have going into re-election? Well, they're trying to turn back the clock to Bush and Obama times with China, where we just talk nice and tacitly say that economic growth and engagement with China will tame China, even though we have 2.5 decades of proof after letting China into the World Trade Organization that that's not what happens. Actually, China gets worse when you treat it that way.
I want to move on to politics with you this morning. The Wall Street Journal editorial board is out with a new op-ed on, quote, Hurricane Ron DeSantis. They point out in the op-ed how DeSantis is receiving high marks for his handling of Hurricane Idalia and also Hurricane Ian last year, and how this may prove he is up for the job as president. Christian, you're just a surrogate for Ron DeSantis. Your reaction to this op-ed this morning?
Yeah, I think very good points. And if you want someone who's going to be flashy in debates, well, I mean, I think he did very well in debates. Polls indicate he gained after that first debate on Fox News. But someone who can actually administer a difficult sprawling executive branch, which has now been demonstrated twice. This hurricane recovery and the more significant hurricane last year, you're in. And, if you contrast it to other candidates, frankly, like former President Donald Trump and the COVID crisis, where we had, 2-hour press conferences and Anthony Fauci in charge, and this haphazard response compared to this coherent one. I mean, Donald Trump never really had control over his own administration. Don't take my word for that. He says it himself. He says he hired a bunch of losers and he fired all these people. That hasn't been a problem for Ron DeSantis, who can actually manage his own executive branch. So as voters see that, and as we're still 400 plus days from the election, still 4 months from Iowa, plenty of time to make up the gap with Donald Trump. And I think after Iowa, which I think he'll win, we'll see a race that's very fluid.
I'm glad that you brought up Iowa, because the Journal did point to kind of his personality struggles in Iowa, that he, isn't as maybe comfortable or didn't have as much success doing the handshakes and doing the small talk, that really wasn't his wheelhouse. Is Governor DeSantis aware of this maybe criticism or problem, if you will, with his campaign style? Does he care? Because I definitely heard him in the Fox News debate, lean more into his success as governor, which seems to be a better strategy for him.
Certainly aware of the criticism. I don't think anyone accepts it, though. I mean, this is a man who won re-election in Florida by 19 points. I mean, a huge landslide that even carried Democrat strongholds like Miami, carried just about all ethnic groups, various groups. So he actually is good at retail politics, and the proof is in the pudding in Iowa. He's done, I think he's halfway to the so-called full Grassley of visiting all of Iowa's counties, and Iowa has a lot of counties for a small state. Donald Trump will be busy in depositions, unfair as they may be. There's a difference between holding rallies and doing boat parades and engaging in the retail politics. And if you look at certainly the number of people who are willing to caucus, and remember, Iowa isn't just showing up to vote. You have to stay all day and caucus. He's, I believe, more than half, or a significant way to where Ted Cruz was in 2016. Ted Cruz actually defeated Donald Trump in 2016 in Iowa.
I will say, too, real quick, we got to run. Is he going to be there to meet President Biden?
To be where to meet President Biden?
But Biden's going to Florida.
Oh, okay.
Tomorrow.
We were still talking Iowa.
Yeah.
I think
sorry, but I got to run. But
President of the United States.
Okay, yeah, but that's my question, really quick. Do you think that Ron DeSantis greets President Biden tomorrow in Florida?
I don't know the exact schedule, but I think decorum and protocol is I think something that the governor is good at. So yes.
All right, it's going to be interesting. Christian White, it's good to see you. A lot of topics covered. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel.
All right.